The grocery bill is rising again, and fuel is only part of the story. For middle-class households, the pressure is immediate. Food is not optional. Families can delay a vacation, postpone a purchase, or cut back on entertainment, but groceries still have to be bought every week. When prices rise at the supermarket, the household budget feels it directly. The increase does not begin at the checkout counter. It starts earlier in the food system, through fuel, trucking, farming, fishing, refrigeration, packaging, fertilizer, processing, storage, distribution, weather, trade costs, and global commodity markets. By the time a shopper sees the final price on a shelf, many costs have already moved through the system. A grocery receipt may not say diesel. It may not say fertilizer, freight surcharge, packaging cost, crop problem, tomato duty, or global vegetable oil index. Those pressures can still be inside the final price. The latest numbers show renewed grocery pressure in April 2026. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the food index rose 0.5% in April after being unchanged in March. Food at home, the category that covers grocery store food, rose 0.7% over the month. 5 of the 6 major grocery store food group indexes increased in April. Over the 12 months ending in April 2026, food at home rose 2.9%. Food away from home rose 3.6%. The Associated Press reported that the 2.9% year-over-year increase for food eaten at home was the highest rate for that category since August 2023. AP also reported that overall food prices were up 3.2% over the last year. For households, grocery costs are rising while many families are still paying more for fuel, utilities, rent or mortgages, insurance, and transportation. Even a small percentage increase carries more weight when it affects a recurring expense. This is not a story about one company, one store, one farmer, one distributor, or one fuel supplier. The grocery bill is the final result of many systems working at once. Energy moves through transportation. Diesel moves through freight and agriculture. Electricity moves through refrigeration and storage. Weather affects crops. Animal supply affects meat. Trade costs affect imported foods. Global commodity prices affect ingredients before they become consumer products. Fuel explains part of the pressure, not all of it. AP quoted Bernhard Dahlheimer, assistant professor of macroeconomics and trade in Purdue University's Department of Agricultural Economics, saying, "Today's CPI showed that food prices have been rising 3.2% in the past year. But the story behind that number is more complicated than just an energy shock." That quote captures the central issue. Energy matters. Fuel matters. Diesel matters. The grocery bill is rising for more than one reason. Ken Foster, professor of agricultural economics at Purdue University, made a similar point. AP quoted him saying, "Most of what we're seeing now in the food price chain probably predates the conflict. Grocery prices do not respond instantly to every new event. The food system has delays. Costs move from farms to processors, from processors to warehouses, from warehouses to stores, and from stores to consumers." AP reported that higher costs to produce, process, store, and transport food can take 3 to 6 months to show up on supermarket shelves, according to Purdue economists Ken Foster and Bernhard Dahlheimer. That delay can make grocery inflation difficult to understand at the household level. A family may see higher prices now, even though the cost pressure began months earlier. A fuel shock, crop problem, or transportation cost increase can move through contracts, inventories, logistics, and pricing decisions before it reaches the shelf. Fuel is one part of that chain. BLS reported that the energy index increased 17.9% over the 12 months ending in April 2026. Gasoline rose 28.4%. Electricity rose 6.1%. Natural gas rose 3.0%. For April alone, energy rose 3.8%. Gasoline rose 5.4% on a seasonally adjusted basis. Electricity rose 2.1%. Fuel oil rose 5.8%. Those increases matter because food depends on energy before it reaches the consumer. Farms use fuel. Fishing boats use fuel. Trucks use fuel. Warehouses and cold storage use electricity. Food processing uses energy. Packaging can be affected by petroleum-based inputs. Distribution networks require transport and refrigeration. AP reported that diesel powers fishing boats, tractors, and trucks that ship 83% of U.S. agricultural products. AP also reported that the average diesel price per gallon was up 61% from a year earlier as of Tuesday in the week of the article. The cause and effect is direct. Fuel costs rise. Producing, moving, cooling, storing, and distributing food becomes more expensive. Some of that pressure can be absorbed by farmers, shippers, grocers, or food companies. Some can move into consumer prices. For middle-class households, the result is less flexibility. A grocery budget that once covered a full cart may cover less. A household may switch brands, buy fewer fresh items, delay other purchases, or cut spending somewhere else. The pressure also affects small grocers. AP reported that vendors supplying Sparrow Market, an independent grocer in Ann Arbor, Michigan, added fuel surcharges to deliveries in recent weeks. AP also reported that wholesale prices for meat, produce, and some other products had risen. Raymond Compes, owner of Sparrow Market, told AP, "For independent markets operating on narrow margins, even small increases can have a major impact." That is how the cost chain appears before it reaches the shopper. A vendor adds a fuel surcharge. A small grocer pays more to receive goods. Wholesale prices rise for some products. The store operates on narrow margins. The cost must be absorbed somewhere, by the supplier, the retailer, or the customer. Fuel surcharges raise delivery costs. The grocer's cost of receiving and stocking products rises. Shoppers may face higher shelf prices, fewer promotions, or less price stability. This does not mean every price increase at every grocery store comes from fuel. It means fuel costs can enter the grocery system before the consumer sees them. The category data shows that the pressure was uneven. BLS reported that fruits and vegetables rose 6.1% over the 12 months ending in April 2026. Non-alcoholic beverages rose 5.1%. Cereals and bakery products rose 2.6%. Other food at home rose 2.5%. Meats, poultry, fish, and eggs rose 1.5%. Dairy and related products fell 0.6% over the same period. For April alone, meats, poultry, fish, and eggs rose 1.3%. Beef rose 2.7%. Fruits and vegetables rose 1.8%. Non-alcoholic beverages rose 1.1%. Dairy rose 0.8%. Not every food category rose at the same speed. Not every grocery item was moving in the same direction. Dairy was down over the year. AP reported that butter fell 5.8%, eggs fell 39%, and milk and chicken prices dipped slightly over 12 months as farmers rebuilt flocks affected by bird flu. The grocery bill is rising, but grocery inflation is not universal. The accurate reading is that the total food at home index rose, several major categories rose, and households are seeing pressure across important parts of the basket. Fresh items were among the clearest pressure points. AP reported that prices for perishable and refrigerated products tend to rise faster than packaged goods when energy is an issue. Fresh fruit and vegetables in U.S. cities were up 6.5% in April. Compared with April 2025, meat was up 8.8%. Perishable goods depend on timing, refrigeration, and transport. They must move quickly. They often require cold storage. They can be more exposed to energy and logistics costs because the system has less room for delay. Energy and transportation costs rise. Perishable goods require refrigeration, faster handling, and reliable distribution. The cost pressure becomes more visible in fresh categories. Households see it in produce, meat, and other items that are part of regular weekly shopping. Beef was one of the clearest examples in the research. BLS reported that beef rose 2.7% in April. AP reported that beef was up 15% in April 2026 compared with April 2025. AP identified beef supply, weather and strong demand as part of the grocery cost story. Beef is a common grocery item. When it rises sharply, families may shift what they buy, reduce quantity, substitute other proteins, or accept a higher grocery bill. That is not only an inflation statistic, it is a weekly shopping decision. Produce showed a different kind of pressure. BLS reported that fruits and vegetables rose 6.1% over the 12 months ending in April 2026, and 1.8% in April alone. AP reported that fresh fruit and vegetables in U.S. cities were up 6.5% in April compared with April 2025. AP also reported that the U.S. imposed a 17% duty on fresh tomatoes imported from Mexico in July 2025. Consumer tomato prices rose 40% in the 12 months before April 2026. That is separate from fuel. A duty was imposed on fresh tomatoes imported from Mexico. Imported tomato costs faced additional pressure. Consumers then saw tomato prices rise sharply over the following 12 months. That example shows why grocery inflation has multiple causes. Fuel may raise transport and handling costs. Trade duties may raise the cost of a specific imported product. Weather may affect supply. Strong demand may affect meat. Coffee production problems may affect coffee. Bird flu recovery may bring egg prices down after earlier disruption. The grocery bill is a collection of different markets. Coffee was another category under pressure. AP reported that coffee prices were up 18.5% in April 2026. Compared with April 2025, A.P. identified coffee production problems as one of the factors behind grocery pressure. For many households, coffee is a daily item. When its price rises, the effect is visible on the receipt. The same principle applies to tomatoes, beef, fruit, vegetables, and beverages. Each category has its own supply chain, risks, and cost structure. A single explanation does not cover the whole grocery bill. Fuel is visible because energy prices were rising sharply. But grocery inflation also reflects product-specific supply problems and global commodity pressures. Reuters reported that global food prices rose in April 2026 for a third consecutive month. The FAO Food Price Index reached 130.7 points, up 1.6% from March and the highest level since February 2023. That global index is not the same as a U.S. grocery receipt. It does not translate one-for-one into what families pay in stores. It is an upstream indicator of pressure in globally traded food commodities. The FAO Vegetable Oil Price Index rose 5.9% in April from March, reaching its highest level since July 2022. Reuters reported that higher prices for soy, sunflower, rapeseed, and palm oil contributed to the increase. Reuters also noted that palm oil was supported by biofuels policy incentives. Reuters reported that FAO chief economist Maximo Torero said vegetable oil prices were being driven by elevated energy costs, which increased demand for biofuels made from organic materials such as oil-rich plants. This is another connection between food and energy. When energy prices rise, demand for biofuels can increase. Biofuels can use oil-rich plants that can affect vegetable oil markets. Those global commodity pressures can become another upstream cost in the food system. The connection is not direct from FAO to the supermarket shelf, and it is not automatic. It shows how food and energy markets can become linked before consumers see the final price. Reuters also reported that cereal prices rose 0.8% from March and 0.4% from a year earlier, helped by adequate supplies from previous seasons. Meat prices rose 1.2% in April. Sugar prices fell 4.7%. Global food pressure was rising, but not every commodity moved the same way. Vegetable oils rose sharply. Cereals were relatively resilient. Sugar fell. Meat rose. The grocery bill is not one market. It is many markets inside one receipt. The history explains why households are sensitive to renewed food inflation. USDA's Economic Research Service reported that food prices increased 9.9% in 2022, faster than in any year since 1979. Food at home prices rose 11.4%. and food away from home prices rose 7.7%. USDA cited highly pathogenic avian influenza, the Russia-Ukraine war, and economy-wide inflation pressures such as high energy costs. That year changed how many households experienced grocery shopping. Even after food inflation slowed, the price level remained difficult for many families. When grocery inflation accelerates again, households feel it quickly because they are already paying from a higher base. In 2023, USDA said food price growth slowed. Food at home prices rose 5.0%, while food away from home prices rose 7.1%. In 2024, food prices rose 2.3%. Food at home prices rose 1.2%, while food away from home prices rose 4.1%. In 2025, food prices rose 2.9%. Food at home prices rose 2.3%, while food away from home prices rose 3.8%. On April 24, 2026, USDARS projected 2026 overall food prices would rise 2.9%. Food at home prices would rise 2.4%, and food away from home prices would rise 3.6%. By April 2026, BLS reported food at home up 2.9% over 12 months and food away from home up 3.6%. The sequence shows that grocery inflation had cooled from the extreme pace of 2022, but it had not disappeared from household life. A severe food inflation year in 2022 was followed by slower but still positive increases in 2023. 2024, and 2025. A 2026 forecast still showed food prices rising. April CPI data then showed renewed grocery pressure. For households, relief was incomplete. Prices did not return to earlier levels. They continued rising, only at different speeds. The warning from food economists is that the causes are layered. Ken Foster told AP, "It's possible some of that's starting to seep down the supply chain and get into those prices." He was referring to packaging and energy costs. Packaging is often invisible to consumers, but food has to be bottled, wrapped, boxed, refrigerated, shipped, stored, and displayed. Foster also told AP, "I expect the Iran conflict to impact the coming year's food prices through a couple of channels. 1. The energy costs and transportation handling. The other would be through packaging costs." That is an expectation from an economist, not a completed outcome. It identifies the channels being watched: energy, transportation handling, and packaging. A.P also reported that around 30% of the world's fertilizer travels through the Strait of Hormuz. That creates another possible longer-term channel through fertilizer costs. For the grocery system, fertilizer matters because it affects agricultural production costs. If fertilizer becomes more expensive or less available, it can influence the cost of growing food. The research does not support claiming a specific future grocery increase from fertilizer. It supports saying fertilizer is one of the upstream channels economists are watching. The shrimp example shows how fuel can change production decisions. AP reported that some shrimp boats had not left the dock because they could not catch enough shrimp to offset diesel costs. The Southern Shrimp Alliance said fuel typically makes up 30% to 50% of U.S. shrimpers' costs. AP also reported that U.S. shrimpers supply only 6% of shrimp consumed by Americans. Diesel costs rise for shrimpers. For some boats, the cost of operating can exceed what they expect to earn from the catch. Domestic shrimp supply decisions are affected, and consumers remain connected to global seafood supply chains. This is not the whole grocery story, but it is a concrete example of fuel changing food economics before the product reaches the market. When fuel becomes too expensive for a boat to operate profitably, the effect is not just a fuel bill, it is a production decision. Cost pressure can reduce supply activity or change sourcing patterns. The same logic applies across food and freight. A farm processor, distributor, or grocer may face a cost increase and decide how much to absorb, how much to pass through, and how to adjust operations. Each decision affects the final consumer differently. Some costs appear quickly, some appear months later. Some are absorbed, some show up as higher prices. Some show up as smaller margins. Some show up as less availability, fewer promotions, or a changed product mix. That is why food inflation cannot be reduced to one headline. The BLS data gives the national picture. Food at home rose 0.7% in April 2026 and 2.9% over 12 months. Food away from home rose 0.2% in April and 3.6% over 12 months. Full-service meals rose 3.8% over 12 months. Limited service meals rose 3.2%. For households, eating at home and eating out both became more expensive over the year. The pressure does not appear only at the supermarket. Restaurants also face food, labor, rent, utilities, and energy-related costs. The research here does not break down every restaurant cost, but the BLS data shows that food away from home was also rising. That leaves households with fewer easy escapes. If groceries rise, eating out may not be cheaper. If eating out rises, cooking at home still requires higher grocery spending than before. The budget pressure remains inside the food category. The current reality is not that grocery prices are rising everywhere at the same speed. The current reality is more precise. Grocery prices are rising again, and the causes are spread across the food system. Fuel is part of it. Energy is part of it. Global commodities are part of it. Weather and supply are part of it. Trade costs are part of it. Packaging and fertilizer can be part of it. Category-specific problems are part of it. The household sees the combined result. For a middle-class family, the practical consequence is loss of flexibility. A grocery bill that rises by a few percent can collide with gasoline, electricity, rent, mortgages, insurance, and other monthly costs. Families may adjust by buying cheaper brands, substituting foods, reducing fresh items, shopping at different stores, or cutting back elsewhere. The data does not say every household is affected equally. It does not say every food item is rising. It does not say fuel is the sole cause. It says the Food at Home Index rose 2.9% over the 12 months ending in April 2026. It says 5 of 6 major grocery store food group indexes increased in April. It says energy rose 17.9% over 12 months, gasoline rose 28.4%, electricity rose 6.1%, and natural gas rose 3.0%. It says fresh categories, beef, coffee, tomatoes, and vegetable oils, faced specific pressures. It says global food prices rose for a third consecutive month. Those facts describe a grocery system under renewed cost pressure. As of May 16, 2026, the latest BLS CPI data available for this research showed food at home rising 0.7% in April and 2.9% over 12 months. Food away from home rose 0.2% for the month and 3.6% over 12 months. The latest BLS energy data showed the energy index up 17.9% over 12 months, gasoline up 28.4%, electricity up 6.1%, and natural gas up 3.0%. AP reported that food-at-home inflation was at its fastest year-over-year pace since August 2023, while also emphasizing that fuel spikes were only one reason grocery prices were rising. Reuters reported that global food prices rose for a third consecutive month in April 2026, with the FAO Food Price Index at 130.7 points, the highest since February 2023. USDAERS projected 2026 overall food prices up 2.9%, food at home up 2.4%, and food away from home up 3.6%. The unresolved pressure is the number of cost channels feeding into food. Fuel raises transportation and production pressure. Electricity raises refrigeration and storage pressure. Packaging can be affected by energy and petroleum-based inputs. Fertilizer remains an upstream risk. Weather and supply affect produce and meat. Trade costs affect imported items. Global vegetable oil markets respond to energy and biofuel demand. Coffee and beef have their own supply conditions. No single factor explains the whole grocery bill. The combined effect reaches the same place, the household. A shopper does not need to understand every commodity market to feel the result. The receipt is where the system becomes personal. Fuel is not the whole story, but it is inside the story. When the grocery bill rises again, it is often because costs have already been moving for months, before the shopper reaches the checkout line.